Okay, folks. Yeah, my beanie looks really messed up. I probably should get a new one and switch out. Thinking about updating my wardrobe and all that, clearing all off stuff. But anyways, it's been a long time since I posted anything. I've recorded so many damn videos I just never upload for some reason. Like I think I was just like LARPing at it, like I'll make a video and I'll get things off my chest, and then I'll just like not put it up there or whatever. I've gone through and deleted all those because they're just sitting there taking up space and not really going anywhere. But to be honest with you, like right now with the way my life is, like in some ways things have really been coming together. They've been really forming up, so to speak. But in other ways, it's like a complete train wreck, or that sort of thing. Because, I want to make videos about stacking. I want to talk about that kind of stuff. Obviously, like I've done enough, facing the camera that anonymity is kind of, that's a moot point. There's no real way of like hiding who I am or what I look like or whatever. But while I do really want to start making videos about that, and I'll just sort of figure out if there's anything really new or interesting I can tell anybody or say anything about that would be adding to that conversation. I guess in a lot of ways, other than just like general life things and that sort of stuff. Obviously, Nofap is like one of, if not the main focus of this channel. And unfortunately, I'm basically like in train wreck mode or train wreck state, if you will, as far as that's concerned, because like I really have not been able to quote unquote get back on that horse. Tried to. It's weird because, like, give or take maybe a couple weeks or so, I've gotten to a year, roughly speaking. Not without getting some nicks or some, scars or whatever, cuts, whatever you're going to call it, metaphorically speaking. But I, essentially got to that point, and then after that it's sort of like I don't know, it all kind of fell apart. Something about like when you hold off or hold away from that one thing, whatever it is that you're addicted to or compulsed towards or whatever for a long time, and then if you get any slight like whiff of it, it just kind of like it has that much more of a magnetic pull on you, and honestly, like I'm seeing like the effects of falling back into that in other areas of life, because like in a lot of ways, Nofap isn't really about Nofap. Nofap isn't really about PMO. It's kind of like stacking, there's something deeper to it. And like for instance with Nofap, it's sort of like the more in control of that I am, the more in control of my life I am. For other people it's other things. Some people it's alcohol, some people it's drugs, some people it's literal sex addiction. Some people it's internet addiction, social media addiction, whatever their compulsion or their addiction is, like that's the thing for them. And the more they succeed in minimizing that, or even eliminate it entirely, replacing it with things that are productive and healthy and functional and that sort of deal, like they get more out of life. And right now I know that I have to really truly commit to, and be keeping track of days and having a calendar and all this stuff, just to like give sort of a set framework and a guiding path to my attempts at this, because I'm seeing it in terms of my life. Because like, let's just be honest, like if you're, whether it's fapping or drinking or whatever, smoking, whatever, it's like that sort of stuff takes a certain amount of time and money and energy in one way or another. Some more, some less in different categories. Sometimes it's more in the time category, sometimes it's more in the money, sometimes it's more in the energy category. But it takes that away, and if you've got other things that you're responsible for, it could be your grades, could be your job, could be you're a parent, a spouse, could be you're in the military, you're a sergeant, or you're an officer of some sort, some ranking, and you have responsibilities. Like, if you engage in that kind of stuff, whether it's fapping, drugs, alcohol, and even a little bit, like, it takes time and energy and such away from those other things. And sometimes you do need a release. If it's like, for instance, alcohol, if it's a couple of beers every now and again, that's one thing. But like, I think far too often we end up making excuses for ourselves, and that's what kind of leads to things getting out of control. But that being said, I've essentially, this is what I've been seeing, like all the time that I'll spend looking up, questionable or downright, sexual material, let's just say, engaging in the behavior, and then the aftermath and all that. Like, it's time and energy that gets wasted, and definitely the aftermath. Like, I don't have any motivation to do anything. I'll just be in a very depressed state, and hours will go by. Sometimes I've even ended up like wasting an entire day where the next day I'm suddenly under the gun, and it's like, oh crap, I got 6 different things to do. And it's like, man, let's be real, like you could have gotten at least half of those done the day before, and then you wouldn't be as stressed right now. Well, what were you doing? Oh, PMO. And I think that's in many ways where it's at for me. There obviously are, like, I got some health concerns that I really need to have checked out, and some of them, people want to argue about, like, oh, pornography doesn't cause this or that, or or fapping doesn't cause this or that. It's not, it's not a real problem, or you're just making all this stuff up. But like, honestly, like, with with so many damn things throughout history, like, it's only been like recent years or decades where I don't want to be like sounding like a stereotypical like hippie or druggie or tweaker or whatever. Society man, when they talk like that, or when the stereotype, the affectation is that they talk like that. But when I think about, for instance, tobacco, like how long did it take for people to admit that, hey, like, that stuff has actual, like, not like hippy dippy, like toxins, man. You got good that, now, like, I mean, like literal, like, tar and the nicotine and all the other carcinogens. Like, how long did it take for people to actually be willing to, on a wide enough, socially, apparent, level, be willing to admit that stuff, it kills people. It has carcinogens, and it gives you lung cancer, etc., etc. I mean, some people will, somehow, for one reason or another, get away with it and not get that. But like, it's been, increasingly linked with, or significantly enough linked with lung cancer. And for the longest time, people didn't want to admit that. They, the moneyed interests were able to keep that from getting out on the airwaves, so to speak. I think the last commercial promoting a cigarette or like tobacco company was like, I think it was back in like the 70s or the 80s. And how long people smoked tobacco, Same thing with alcohol. Like, we still, actually, in fact, we still have advertisements promoting the consumption of alcohol, and yeah, they add a little like tagline or a little message at the end, at the end saying, please drink responsibly. If you're, if you got, a couple of drinks and you don't get behind the wheel of a moving, vehicle, have somebody, whatever. They'll try and slip that in at the end, but like, how many people die from drunk driving? So I have to wonder, like, with PMO, like, how long is it gonna take before society is actually willing to, like, own up to the fact that, like, pornography it's not good for you? Like, I get why it's there. I get why, predominantly men go for it, and why, fapping isn't a thing for guys. Thanks testosterone. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I mean, I'm glad I'm a man. But, as with all things, like, there's pros and cons, there's ups and downs, there's challenges, there's, I don't want to say defects or toxic, whatever, to it, but it's definitely, like, challenges when you have that, because, I mean, look at the whole PMO, Nofap, fapping, pornography, whole deal, like, that's a predominantly male thing. Why? Because, the men who had high levels of testosterone got to reproduce over millions of years, and so here we end up, with, men. I mean, obviously they'll say men nowadays have much lower testosterone, but as far as the baseline is concerned, men having way more testosterone because that's what favored, them to pass on their genetics. But of course, one of the downsides is, much higher libido, and the desire to, spread it far and wide, which obviously, if you're an average guy, you don't get that opportunity just because of the effects of the other side of that whole dynamic, and that's just how it is. But, getting back to it, I wonder how long it's going to go on before society is willing to actually own up to the fact that, like, excessive consumption of pornography and PMO, they have, not just like psychological effects. People talk about that a lot. Oh, I feel so depressed, or I feel so, lack of motivation, or this and the other. But I mean, I think, honestly, like, from what I've read, like, there are actual, like, you are physically damaging the nerve endings in a certain area of your body. You could be pulling muscles, tearing muscles. You could, possibly be getting hernias, that sort of thing, which is why I have some health concerns of my own, which, I mean, it's going to be a very, let's just say, uncomfortable conversation to be having, partially because I've really never gone to the doctor. I've avoided a lot of stuff by making lifestyle decisions, like not drinking or smoking, and trying to exercise, trying to be on a diet, that sort of deal. Trying to get enough sleep, whatnot. But I really need to get back on that horse. Not because of all the stuff you see, like, on the Nofap subreddit where they're talking about superpowers, or, like, all this, like, all the kind of stuff that you'd expect, guys in their teens and their 20s to be obsessed about. Like, hey, if I do the Nofap, bro, will I get the girl saw? But, like, because of the fact that I see it having a genuinely negative effect on my life, even at this point, even though I've gone and done essentially a year-long streak, I've made significant progress in life because of being on Nofap. That's going to basically be the goal. I hate to be going back to the whole 90 days of Nofap thing, but, like, that's a big thing for me right now, because, like, getting to a month or two would be like a big deal at this point. It's kind of like, I know what it's like to get to a year, been there, but, like, obviously, like, getting to a year, while it is, definitely, like, a huge step in the right direction, it's not like it stops there. Like, it's kind of like graduating from college. Yes, there is life after graduation, or graduating from high school. There is life after graduation. A lot of it is dependent upon, what you make of it, what decisions you make. Some of it's dependent upon factors that are completely out of your control. And you just, hope that those work out for the best for you. And if they don't, well, I don't know. I mean, like, you may have seen or heard from several of my last videos, some of the things that, I've discovered about the last 20 years and how that's really changed my perspective on a lot of things. And, it's explaining a lot of my anger and my confusion and my frustration with life in general. So that's what I'm doing, because I feel like taking these classes and taking 13 units this semester, I'm a little bit past the halfway mark. One of the classes I was really struggling in, it was this class I signed up for the last minute, Java programming class. I turned that around. The other two classes I've mostly maintained. One of them I need to turn up the heat on, in part because I've been struggling with it a little bit lately. There's the fact that with what I'm doing right now, it's almost like, barring some major health catastrophe or something or other major happening, it's almost like the sky is the limit. Most of the classes I'm doing are retakes. The classes I took in undergrad, I got good enough grades to graduate, but not good enough grades to get into graduate school even. And ironically enough, they're also prerequisites for things like, medical school or physician assistant school, PA school, or, stuff of that nature. And when I say the sky is the limit, what I'm saying is that there are some schools out there where, they'll check out the box that you have a bachelor's, and then they'll look at your last, 60 units or 30 units or so for your GPA. And then beyond that, it's your MCAT score and your clinical hours and stuff of that nature, personal statement. And essentially, depending upon how well I do in these courses, that'll determine how many doors get opened up. Obviously, the bare minimum for me is to get into graduate school, get that master's. Along that way, pick up some certifications and software dev, so I'll have that kind of skill set. Because a lot of what's been holding me back is not only been not having the master's, but not having software dev skills. And honestly, in some ways, and I know Dark Magician made this sort of remark, or he asked this question of if things are in my area just oversaturated, because shouldn't a bachelor's of science in chemical engineering quote unquote be good enough to get your foot in the door or get an interview or so? And there is a level of that, definitely, but I think the economic environment is, I'm not saying that you're not pointing this up, because you are in a sense pointing it out, saying it's super saturated, or it's saturated, maybe you need to look elsewhere, geographically speaking. I don't know how to answer this in 50 words or less, but some of it is the fact that they've been laying off lots of people, so there are obviously engineers out there with 10, 15, 20 years experience who you're competing with. Some of it's the whole H-1B visa deal, where they can hire somebody from overseas, bring them here, and pay them less. So in some senses, that H-1B visa recipient is getting screwed over to a certain extent, but they're also getting to live in the United States or the UK or Canada or wherever it is. H-1B visa, obviously I'm referring to the United States, but I'm sure there's equivalent programs in other countries. But it's this whole labor arbitrage deal where companies will say we don't have enough skilled XYZ in our own country, we need to bring people from overseas in order to fill that gap. And it's no, you do, you just don't want to pay people as much. You want to cut your labor costs. And 50 years ago it was factory workers. Nowadays it's white collar workers, as the expression goes. Not, when I say white, I'm not talking racial. It's some old timey, white collar versus blue collar based off of like the color of the clothes they would wear, sort of a deal. You think about somebody who's working as an accountant. They're probably wearing a starched, white collared shirt or something. That's a white collar job, or an engineer, or what have you. So there's that factor, but then I think it's the fact that, like, while I have an engineering degree, I didn't really get as much out of it as I possibly could have. Some of it is on me, some of it's on the school itself, some of it's on the professors. I kind of was stretched a little too thin during those last 2 years, and so I wasn't able to necessarily focus on getting on side projects, or I had an internship, but it wasn't like a great internship. It wasn't one that could lead to an actual job, or maybe they just didn't like me. I wasn't always, quote unquote 100% on, and sometimes I spazzed out, or I was under a lot of stress, let's just say. For those who were following me during that time, y'all know a lot of what I was going through and what I was dealing with and how it affected my behavior. Obviously, anybody on the outside of that, they see the behavior, they don't see what's causing it, so they go, oh, that guy's weird, or that guy's, dysfunctional, or I don't know about having him, he doesn't seem all put together, or whatever. And then, there's the fact that, like, I think we got some exposure to software work with MATLAB, but, like, again, I was so stretched thin, taking such a heavy course, so I just didn't have the time or the energy to really, like, focus in on that, and, learn to code, all that well. I've had some exposure messing around with Java and C++ and C# and that sort of thing, mostly post-graduation, but nothing really super solid until, like, recently, where, I'm taking this class and I'm finally starting to learn this, I'm starting to codify my learning bit by bit. Didn't have that before. And, a lot of it also is just the fact that, like, I don't think that, and I could be wrong, I could be wrong. Anybody out there who has more experience with this, you let me know. But I kind of feel like a lot of engineering degrees, not all of them, there are some that will give more, like, industry relevant, projects or assignments or what have you, such that you can, like, you'll be able to go into an interview and, prove that at least one thing, one technology or whatever that company X uses. You'll be able to do that. But I think a lot of engineering degrees, they really don't do that. Particularly at the undergrad level, it's like drinking out of a water hose. And as I've gotten into industry and figured out, like, what engineers actually do, a lot of it is having to do with skill sets that I just don't have, or there's skill sets you could learn, but if you're in a position like me and you want to grow into an engineering position, not only does the company have to have the money available or think they have the money available to hire an engineer and actually, like, take you on into that department, but you've got to essentially, like, brown nose your way in a lot of these cases. And especially if you're in a position like mine where you're just in the manufacturing group, you're just some gremlin in the pit, pulling levers and pushing buttons, and you're making product, you're doing work, but, like, like when I first started back in 2019, like, they wanted a bachelor's degree in a science or engineering discipline. So it seemed like, this is a intro position. I can really grow with this. I can learn a lot and grow and all that sort of stuff. And then, they lowered the requirements to high school diplomas. So, you can tell that, like, there's a perception about being in the position that I'm in that, like, it's almost like a class thing. Like, they think that, you're not really that bright, you're not really that capable. if you had been, you would have gotten an engineering job right out of undergrad, blah, 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 that sort of thing, or a scientist job, or something of that nature. You'd be a research associate, or whatever, you'd be doing something more than what you're doing. And, of course, the irony is that, well, I'd say that's half true in my case, just being honest. The other half of it is like that with the way the market was even back in 2019, like they really weren't hiring that many. I know of a handful of people who did. Some of them had to actually transition into it by being a research associate for about a year or two. Some people, there were a couple here or there who were able to get engineering positions. Some of them had to relocate. Not quite sure how they were able to do that, because anytime I applied, it seemed like they, wouldn't follow up with me precisely because they didn't want to deal with the hassle of relocating somebody from my area out to where they were at or whatever. But there's also the fact that just getting a job in 2019 and then holding on to through 2020 with the pandemic was that was good enough. A lot of it was just I needed money, and I needed money from a job that was at least somewhat relevant to my degree, and decent paying and possibility of overtime and extra cash and that sort of thing. I started that whole journey out of debt series for a reason. Being 6 figures in debt when I finally graduated, large part due to combination of my own immaturity, but also my family's, screwery, where, they would engage in disruptive behaviors that caused me to fail classes, get held back, the list goes on. And, it's kind of funny because, I bring that up because, I've been recently opening up about some of these things to some folks who I know through my work who are around my age, and it's surprising how it's not uncommon because, it's getting into generational stuff, but if you're in your, I don't know, what's the youngest age for millennials? Is it the late 20s? Young millennials, and then all the way up to your 40s or something like that. But a lot of them have had parents who are like mine, who just it's almost like they were lead poisoned or something. They really poor emotional control, bad decision making, no long-term thinking, disruptive behavior, just out of control, out of whack, lifestyle decisions with things like alcohol and drugs and whatnot. And there's so sort of gap between our grandparents' generations who went through so much and had to overcome so much and learned to be disciplined with money and lifestyles and whatnot, in part because they faced real consequences if they screwed up, all the way to going to my parents' generation, where they were just a bunch of screw-offs who wasted untold opportunities to just they wanted to be self-centered jagoffs about it, they could have been, and been living on the lap of luxury in their 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. But they couldn't do that. And I know this one coworker of mine in particular, it took her close to a decade to get about a decade to get through school because of stuff that her parents did. And I was relating it to her, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, me too." And it's wow, I appreciate your willingness to be honest and open about that, because it's made me feel less of a freak. For the longest time I just felt I was just this biggest dirtbag POS because it took me so long and this, that, and the other, and it's just actually I'm not that I'm not that special, I'm not that special, but it's it's not it's I'm not that special in the sense that other people have accomplished all these things. It's more I'm not that special in that I got screwed over the exact same way they did. And but anyways, this is kind of like why I'm having to do all the things I'm having to do. Partially because of family, partially because it's just like that's the way the industry is, and obviously, I really want that 6-figure engineering position where it's work from home and I'm working with code and all that. Being a process engineer or whatever, only having to be on site, so many times per week or whatever. But if I could, obviously I'm gonna aim higher than that. But again, it's gonna mean me eliminating these things that are just taking so much time and energy away from what I need to be doing. Because in the last month or two, it's been any indication, it's just gonna make things way harder and it's gonna wear me out. So I'll have to find a way to not do that. And what else? Trying to think. But yeah, that's where I'm at. And if I think of anything else, hopefully I'll be able to post it. But geez, what? I swear I was gonna say something else, mention something else, but yeah. Well, anyways, I'm gonna finish here and I'll actually upload this one. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, folks. See you later. Bye bye.